Hello, everyone. I'm Anna Fishman, and you are listening and watching to episode number 9 of Give Yourself Permission or Sign Your Own Permission Slip podcast. Clearly, it's January, and I don't know what's happening anymore. We have an amazing guest today. Her name is Nicole, and it will be a very different kind of conversation compared to all the other conversations we've had. Nicole and I connected a few months ago on a workshop, and I was just drawn to her and her story and her background. She'll tell us a little bit more about that. But today's topic is give yourself permission to align your soul. So stay tuned for all the interesting and spiritual things that we're going to talk about today. Nicole, thank you so much for being here. Welcome.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
So tell us a little bit about who Nicole is and why are we talking about all the spiritual stuff today?
Well, it's just really funny because in that workshop, I was also very drawn to you. So thank you for making that connection. And a little bit about myself is I am very long story short, I come from a corporate background. I did project management in private equity, banking, insurance for many, many, many years and working with top executives in the company. And then I found out essentially that I can talk to the dead. And I did a 180 on my career over the past 3 years or so, left corporate America to pursue essentially this new spiritual connection modality and helping others not only connect with their departed loved ones, but also letting them know kind of who their soul is, what their journey is, and trying to essentially help people move through grief, through healing, so that they can live their best lives here on planet Earth while they're here.
Wow, that's incredible. And here I thought I did a big jump from being in corporate to traveling the world. You did a jump from being in corporate to traveling kind of to other worlds, like to the that.
Spirit worlds. No, it's a great point. And it's just really funny because as I continue forward with this career of mine, I'm finding that I am starting to do like workshops internationally because so I think you and I are tied hip like to the hip because I'm also totally in love with travel and I totally see that in my future as well. But yeah, I mean, I think either way, bravo to both of us for leaving this corporate job and a role behind.
Oh my God, so much bravo. And I want to, give a little bit of that inspiration and empowerment to other women. We just chatted for a few minutes before we started recording, but I said, if one person listens to this episode and gets a tiny whiff of inspiration to follow their soul, to follow their heart, to like give themselves permission to align with what they want to do, that's a success. Like we
Mhm.
as moms, as women in general, you don't have to be a mom. As a woman, it's just in part of us to put others first, to do what society expects, to go to work, to go to school, to have kids, to get married, to clean, to cook, whatever that thing is in your life. But it's never like, oh, I'm gonna give myself a massage and go get my nails done as like the number one thing when you wake up.
Oh,
So
it's so true. Yeah.
whatever that thing that makes you feel aligned, like maybe for someone it's massage, but maybe for someone else it's connecting to their past life or talking to their, er, part of their family that's no longer physically with them. And it's okay. Like we need to start breaking the rules and doing what
You're
makes us feel happy.
and you're so right. And I think us as women, I think we're really good at playing the game, right? And especially motivated women and women that, I'm gonna say it like I'm a people pleaser, right? Like, and there's been a lot of undoing of that
Join
in
the
recent
club.
years, right? But I was the only girl in my family. I was, the golden child, the daughter, right? That could do no wrong until I did very wrong, but that's a whole other podcast episode. And I always wanted to be the best. And like I graduated top of my class in high school and college. Like I always wanted to be the best at what I could do because when I was the best, I felt like externally validated for who I was and what I was here to do.
Yeah.
And I think when you step out and when you realize that you are not the expectations that others put on you and that you have your own set of rules, values, and opinions. And I think, for me, my turning point was having a child and finally realizing that I don't want my child to be brainwashed the way that I was brainwashed and being able to step out into your true authentic self and live a life that's happy. I want everyone to have that. I do. And how did it feel? I got to ask you, put you on the spot if you don't mind. Like, how did it feel when you left corporate America to do your travel job,
Oh my God,
your
it was the
career?
scariest thing ever. It was scarier than saying yes to when my husband proposed. It was scarier than moving out of my parents' house. It was scarier than having two kids. It was the scariest thing ever because I was like, when I told my parents, they're like, "Are you insane? You have a graduate degree and 10 years in corporate marketing. You're gonna be a travel agent? Have you heard of internet?" Like they thought I lost my mind. My friends were like patting me on the back, like, yeah, good for you. Like, and I was like, yep, I'm gonna be a travel agent. Dun, 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 dun. Do you want to go to Disney? Like, it was just like I had my own vision. I had my own vision to do whatever I wanted to do, but my husband was the only person who said, like, yeah, you can do this. I was like, you think me sending strangers to foreign countries for a lot of money is a good idea? He's like, yeah, you can do this. I'm like, okay.
But I think that's a testament to who you are and how strong you are, because I'm totally with you. And I think I equally got the looks of shock when I was like, I'm gonna quit my job and talk to the dead, right? And it's just, and I, by the way, I come from a Roman Catholic background where this is not okay, not okay. So I had, a couple things going against me there, but it is so scary to make that decision. But like as I rewind, like right before you make that decision, I have to say, and this was true with me, I'd love to see if it was true with you too. I was so bored and so resentful of my work, and I woke up every day miserable and sad, and I tried to fill that empty space in me with like hobbies, like side hustles. I opened up a photography business at one point, right? And nothing filled my soul. And I knew I had to go.
Yeah.
It's
Oh, I
true
can
for you.
relate so much. I can relate. I was, I would cry every Sunday night because I had to go to work on Monday.
Mm-hmm.
I also like had this mental shift when I had my first oldest son. I went back to work. So I spent the whole summer on maternity because he was born on Memorial Day. So I spent like this beautiful summer. I mean, yeah, it was hard. It was your first child. You have no freaking clue what you're doing. But and then I was like, wait a second, I'll never have a summer at home. Like I took a lot of long walks thinking like remembering my summers as a child with my grandparents. And I'm like, wait, I'll never have a summer like this again. Like I'll never have a summer to myself. And I was starting becoming like really depressed about that. I'm like, wait, I'm only gonna have 2 weeks a year and I have to like break up those weeks between like spring break and Christmas break and I started spiraling. I'm like, I'm gonna open a coffee shop. I'm gonna open a painting studio. I don't paint. I don't really drink coffee. Like, it was just like it was that how desperate I was. And I went back to work, and it was. I remember I was like a month or so into going to work. I would leave at 6 a.m. I would come at 8 p.m. I leave, it's dark. My baby's sleeping. He was 4 months old. I come home, it's dark, my baby's sleeping, and I would like take him out of the crib while sleeping, sit in the dark room just so I can hold his warm body and cry my eyes out. And my husband caught me one day and he's like, what's wrong? Is the baby sick? Are you sick? Well, like on paper, everything was fine. I'm not sick. The baby is not sick. We have a roof over our head. We have a food on the table. We have both jobs, like we live in a safe neighborhood. That was the most miserable ever. And I knew something has had to change. So like life kind of like pushes you in that corner and you can't explain it, but you know something's wrong.
And I think you said it so eloquently. On paper, everything looked fine.
Yeah.
And I think that us as women, when things look good on paper, we suppress our own desires, our own urges, our own, right? Because it's so easy to put yourself to the side when everyone else is taken care of and everything looks good.
Yeah.
And I love that you knew that something needed to change. And like the same with me, I knew something needed to change. And I remember sobbing as I quit my job. And I wasn't sobbing for me. I was so excited for me. And my husband is very supportive as well. So we have that in common.
That's
I
amazing.
sobbed to my boss's boss when I put in my notice because he's a wonderful man. And I felt so bad. And it was just like this cathartic exercise of almost like releasing all of the pent up I don't know, the shell of who I was to him, and like this letting go and literally releasing tears of who I was as a career professional in corporate America to him while I was giving him
Wow.
my notice.
I just got chills. No, that's powerful. You were like the word that came to mind, like you were kind of like reborn into a new Nicole. Like you were leaving your old corporate self in that office during that meeting and you were starting like from scratch or from maybe not scratch, but like from
Yeah.
a better place. That's amazing.
Yeah. And if you look, I was just doing this right before we got on here. I looked at a picture of me when I started doing my social media posts like a year and a half ago versus now, and you can see the change
Yeah.
on my face. Like the stress is gone, right? So, like, I want to encourage your listeners that you need to, like, if you have that urge to, that something isn't right, even if on paper everything looks fine, and you know deep in your soul or deep, just this gut feeling of, I don't want to live this way, I'm miserable, there is another path for you. And that's actually like, if we get into the spiritual side of the house, like your soul is meant for more, and your human is finally realizing it, which is so cool.
That's amazing. And that's I think it takes I don't know what word I'm trying to come up with because it's January and I'm still like in my, I don't know, Christmas bottoms. Like I can't think. But like I don't know if it takes courage or if it takes like really paying attention to yourself because so many people are stuck in this rut of crying every Sunday night, of not being happy, of being miserable. I remember when I worked in corporate, people would say, "You're so negative, you're so," and I'm like, I'm not a negative person. Like I've never been a negative person, but that corporate world, that
Exactly.
that commute, that like pressure made me into this negative person who I wasn't. So it wasn't true me. And now when I look at my pictures, now when I look, like yesterday I was wearing a Grinch sweater all day because I was like, look at me wearing a Grinch sweater to work because I gave myself permission to change my work so I can
Yes.
wear whatever the heck sweater I want to wear and not have to like wear the old boring corporate clothes that I hated. So it's like
Yeah.
that little thing that like you listen to yourself, you listen to your inner voice which I never used to because that's not on paper what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to go to work, have kids,
Yes.
get married, make dinner, do laundry, like read with your kids before bed. Like that's what you're supposed to do. You're not supposed to go to Italy and have a private carnival like for yourself and your girlfriends. Like that's not what you do. But heck yes, that's what I did 2 weeks ago. And I'm
Mhm.
so much happier. And I want other women to hear this and be like, heck, I don't need to do the dishes. Like maybe they can wait. Maybe I can go sit in the sun for 10 minutes.
Yes. And that little inner voice is your intuition. And your intuition comes from your higher self. And your higher self always knows exactly what you need at any moment. So I love that you have found that and you listen to that and you follow it. And for a lot of people, it takes literal training for them to realize, oh, I have an inner voice. I have this little, it's like a little Geppetto on your shoulder, like this little, it's not really your conscience, but you know what I mean? Like I have this inside of me that is literally my true north. It's my guiding star that helps me in life. And if you can find that, that's your ultimate life hack. 100% every single time, because it will always show you the way and show you what you need. And here's the added benefit. And I love your take on this: when you start following your intuition, once you learn how to listen to it and you actually follow what it says, your life enters a flow state
Yep.
and things are just easier.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
When I started working from home, when I quit my job and like nobody in my family is an entrepreneur. So like everybody thought it was like completely like I was completely bananas. And the first year I wasn't really like knowing what the heck I was doing. I mean, who really does know what they're doing when they're just starting a brand new business? But I started learning so much about myself. I was like, oh, I actually need complete quiet around me to do work because I sat in the huge office of salespeople who are like all day on the phone and I
Yeah.
couldn't concentrate. I'm like, so I am not lazy or like not able to do stuff. I just need a different environment. Or like I realize that like I'm very efficient when I follow my flow. Like some mornings I wake up and I'm very creative and I feel like doing like a batch of social media content. Other mornings I wake up and I'm like, I don't want to do anything creative. Give me a Excel spreadsheet. I'll crunch my numbers. I'll do like accounting. But when you work for someone else, you don't have that flexibility. You have to do what you have to do. So I stopped forcing myself doing accounting when I felt like writing and writing when I felt like doing accounting. And I became much more efficient. And I was like, oh my God, like I can actually do things. I can actually be positive and not, I can actually enjoy what I'm doing, make money while enjoying what I'm doing. Because this is another paradigm where like, if you're enjoying it, then it's not work, right? But we all like got so used to like, you have to hate your job to get paid. And if you're loving it and you're getting paid, there's something wrong with it. I'm like, no, you can like love it and get paid and enjoy your job. So many things, like so many things.
Right. And I hope you don't mind, like, as you talk,
No, no,
spirit,
of
like, is in
course.
my ear, showing me things too. And what it looks like when you truly follow your intuition and follow things that are like the path of least resistance, and you do things that you love, what happens to your energy is it actually like raises in vibrational level. So if I kind of explain what that looks like, is vibration level is just like what you said. Like when you are in the corporate world, you're unhappy, you're at a low vibration level. And when you're doing things you love, and you're in this flow state, you're at a higher vibration level. And then what happens is once you're in this higher vibration level, especially as an entrepreneur, you are able to attract the types of clients that you want to attract. Because I would bet, I would put my money on, and I'd love you to identify if this is true or not. For the first like 6, 8, 9 months of your um, new job, your entrepreneur job, you struggled probably to find clients just because you were coming out of this corporate vibration level, this lower vibration level, and figuring out how to be more in alignment with the things that made you happy. And then when you finally said, I don't give an F, right? And you were like, you know what? I'm going to do what I want to do. I'm going to wear my Grinch sweater to
Yeah.
the office, right? Like that's when you start attracting your
Yeah.
dream clients because you are being 100% authentically you. And truth, especially us as women, we can intuitively know who's trusting, who's truthful, who's authentic. And when you are living in that truthful, authentic vibration, you just naturally attract the people that are supposed to be in your energy field in your life.
100%. I fired every single client from my first year of business because
Makes
I was
sense.
like, this is not the people I want to talk to every day. This is not the type of sales I want to do. This was just like none of that was what I wanted to do. And I was like, if I'm gonna do this business, if I'm starting from scratch, I like quit my corporate life and I bet everything on this business, I'm gonna do it the way I want to do it. I'm not gonna do it the way some travel guru said you're supposed to join this type of agency. Like, no. And like when we started chatting today, and I said, I'm not in my office. I'm in my dining room because I felt like sitting in front of this beautiful garland over my head because I
Yes.
don't like the lighting in my office. And yesterday I was recording and I looked like a ghost with red lips. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. You know what? Too bad. Too bad. I'm recording in my dining room today. Like I'm doing
Yes.
what because I gave myself permission to break the rules. This was my theme for last year, and I'm trying to like carry this into this year. I want to break the rules. I want to follow my inner intuition, my soul. Like, I just want to do the things that make me happy. And now, even like this particular thing, recording it in front of this background versus my office background makes me so much like more relaxed and excited and happier. And oh, wow, this is going to be the background for today's episode.
Yes, absolutely. And I love it so much because what you have naturally found works for you is just like what I help my clients do all the time is just lean into what makes you happy, what brings you joy. And that naturally is going to raise your vibration level and attract the things in your life that you want. And like that is the true law of attraction is that if you are, and people toss it around all the time and they toss it around so wrong, right? Because you think, oh, if I wish for my Mercedes Benz, it's going to show up in the driveway, right? And that has nothing to do with it because you need to be at the right vibrational level to attract it. And sometimes that takes work.
Yeah,
And especially for us, it takes a lot of societal conditioning or deconditioning, um, and removing the expectations, beliefs, behaviors that others have placed on you. And just again, like to your point, like writing your own permission slip to be who you want to be and make yourself do the things that make you happy. And then life gets so much easier as a result of that. And
yeah,
that's being in alignment with your soul.
100%.
Mm-hmm.
I want to go back to to the beginning when you mentioned like when you quit your corporate and you start talking to the dad. Like that's not really like when I'm gonna grow up, I'm gonna talk to your dad for a living. Like that's not what really people do, right?
Right.
How did you like how did that come around? How did you fall like how did you find that? I'm so curious.
It's a really good question. So I have always been obsessed with mediumship. I grew up watching the TV shows. I think it was like the John Holland. Like I loved it. And I being raised Catholic personally, I was like, what is everyone? So everyone just comes here once and they go chill in heaven, like, and that's it. Like and they don't talk to us. Really? Like, what am I? So they're just floating by on a cloud. So I never really understood, I'm going to say like the religious view of heaven as like you come here once and you go. But I've always been obsessed with mediumship anyway. And then one day in the middle of COVID, I was home working remotely, and my son, who was in kindergarten at the time, was sitting next to me trying to remote learn how to read on a Zoom screen with his kindergarten teacher. He was terrified to be alone because he told me there were shadow people in our basement. So he could actually see spirit with his eyes. And I played it off. He's got a good imagination, whatever. Like, so okay, I'll humor him. I won't let him be in the basement alone while we're there together all day. Fast forward a few years, he's still afraid of being in the basement. Now he's afraid of being upstairs in his room by himself. Like, and he's 8 at this time. And there's no way this is normal activity for 8-year-olds to be terrified in a house where we haven't had anything bad happen ever. This is not an old antique New England house, right? Like this is built in the 80s, right? So I finally reached out to a medium and I was like, could he possibly be really seeing spirit? Because I believed it. I believed that spirit was there. I've never, ever in my life, besides the Sixth Sense movie, heard of anyone seeing spirit with their physical eyes. And she's like, yeah, no, he's actually seeing spirit. So why don't you just go deal with it? And I'm like, what do you mean? Why don't I just go deal with it? She's like, well, you're a medium. Why don't you just figure it out? And I'm like, wait, what? And she's like, you didn't know that you were a medium? I was like, no, I didn't have no idea that I was a medium. So she saw right away that I was a medium and I had absolutely no idea. So I ended up signing up for her 8-week mentoring class. And then from day one of class, when she showed me how to connect, there they all were. And I'm like, oh, hey, everybody. So,
Oh my God.
but I think it's a classic case of I grew up in a household where we didn't talk about it. We didn't talk about dead people, we didn't talk about mediumship. Like I used to watch it on TV and that was it. So I was kind of, I'm going to say raised under a more religious oppressive household. And then once I figured out that I could do this, I'm like, oh, I probably have been doing this my whole life. I just had no idea.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That is so interesting. Makes me think about this story that my son used to tell me that he made up.
Oh,
This was like about a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago. I don't remember exactly. But he's now 9, so maybe he was like 7, 8.
okay.
Every night before going to bed, he would tell me, Mom, in my previous life. What? How do you even
Mm-hmm.
know my previous life? In my previous life, I was a boy named Steven. I lived in Japan, and he would like go about this, like his whole life in Japan, about his sister and how they had bunk beds. He would go into like these little details, and I'm like, this is really freaking me out because your imagination is not that good. I've never
Yeah.
heard you like come up with stories like that before. And it was like very like lifelike stories. And he would tell me this every night before bed for like months. And then he's like, "Oh, remember I told you about the boy Steven? Like I made it up." And I'm like, "Did you?" So now that you mentioned your son, I'm like, was he really a boy named Steven in his previous life? Oh my God.
I think so. Did someone have like a leg issue in that life that he mentioned at one point?
That kind of rings a bell. I'm gonna ask him.
Because I see something happen with like a left leg. It's either broken, someone's in crutches, someone can't walk. So I'll leave that one with you.
Wow.
I immediately felt that. So yeah, I mean, that was his past life. And then for him, I just want to say when this information comes in, it comes in like a memory. So it doesn't surprise me at all that he's retelling the story like it's a memory. But now he's old enough to discern that's not actually a memory. I might remember it crystal clear, but that's probably just a story that I tell myself. And this is classic with kids. I know so many kids that have told their parents about past lives. and they brush it off as this fun creative story. No, that was literally the past. That was probably his most recent past life that he had, which is why the memory is so clear.
Right? That
Yeah.
is just like it's so fascinating. It's also creepy at the same time. It's also like all these things. Like I started believing into this, into the past lives because I had an interesting experience. So I am very, we're like totally going off topic. I'm like, let's talk
I
about
love it.
past lives. Like,
No, we got this.
but this is like, I think maybe that's why I was like so drawn to you. So like I have this really interesting like pull towards Italy. I'm
Hmm.
not Italian. During COVID, when we all did the crazy things that we did, I did my 23andMe and my genetic, like all of that. And I'm like, please tell me I have 1% Italian. Zero, nothing. I was like, okay, thanks for telling me that I'm half Jewish, half Eastern European. I knew that. Can I have my money back? No. I was paying you to tell me I'm Italian. They didn't tell me I'm Italian. So I kind of forgot about all of that. But I do a lot of trips to Italy. I do group trips to Italy. Like when I land in Italy, like it's just that air. Like and I always written that off as like I grew up in Ukraine, so that's like European air. Like just Europe just feels like home to me. No, I don't feel like home in France or Spain or anywhere else. I feel like home in Italy. So I happened to be in Rome again for the second time this past February. And the first time when I went to Rome, like 15 years ago with my husband on our honeymoon, it was a terrible experience. We were on the cruise, it was hot, like we walked into a shop and the owner was rude to us. Like we just like did not have a good experience. So I never had that draw to go back to Rome, even though like I was really into Italy for the last, I don't know, 10 plus years.
Yep.
I had an opportunity to go to Italy, to Rome specifically for a couple of days. I was alone. And I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna book a couple of tours just to like kill some time. I just don't want to like sit in my hotel room. For the context, it's like it's February, it's a Thursday. I'm doing an evening walking tour, like food walking tour.
Hmm.
I booked a group tour. I was the only one there because again, it's February, it's Thursday. It was raining, it was cold. So I was like, you know what? I have no idea where I'm going. I'm just gonna grab a cab real quick to the meeting point and meet the guy there so I don't miss it. So I arrived about 20 minutes too early. No problem. It's raining. No problem. Like I'm in Italy. Like it doesn't matter. So
Yep.
and the meeting point is at this fountain. So I'm walking around the fountain. No one is there. It's like 7 p.m. No one is there. But it's raining and the cobblestones are like twinkling in the fountain. Like so I'm just enjoying the scenery, but I have this feeling like I've been there before. It
Hmm.
just feels like home. It just feels like so familiar. And I know I have never been to that part of Rome before. I've never been next to that fountain. I have like no memories of anything. So I'm taking pictures, videos, whatever. Then the guide shows up and she's like, okay, we're going to start the tour. And I'm the only one on this tour. And we turn around. She's like, oh, this is the arch that we're going to go through to enter the Jewish ghetto of Rome. And I'm like, oh shit. Like,
Okay. Yeah.
like I was like, okay. So I'm part Jewish, like my dad is Jewish, and I was raised with a Jewish identity. I consider myself Jewish. So I'm like, maybe there is something from my past that maybe I was not Italian, maybe I was Jewish and lived in Rome. So she starts telling me about all this like Jewish history, how like Jews were there for like centuries, like during the Greek times, and they're like old, and I'm like, this is so fascinating.
Wow.
Then I we finished the tour. I enjoyed the tour. Time goes by. I like forget about that. Like like it was nice, but it wasn't anything. Then, funny enough, I am watching Emily in Paris. I don't know if you ever watched that show.
Oh yeah. Yep.
And they went to Rome for a weekend.
Yes.
Remember?
Yep.
And they are walking like so. The Emily and her friend, I forgot her name, are walking through Rome, and her friend like sees a guy playing piano, and she wants to like play a new song for Emily. And she sits down to play piano. And then that scene, they're showing like, I don't know, maybe like a 10% of a fountain. I knew
Yes.
exactly which fountain it was. I knew that this was the fountain that I had a walking tour starting. How many fountains are in Italy? In Rome?
I've
Hundreds.
been there a lot.
How did I know that? And it doesn't say which fountain it is, but like I just saw like a teeny like fraction of it. I paused the show. I went into the dark hole of internet. I found where they filmed the show. Yep, that's exactly the fountain where the tour was. I was like, oh my God, there's something has to do with this like fountain. And So I tell this story to my friend who is really into psychology and astrology and like all of that stuff, which I could not be more far removed from that. I'm so practical and pragmatic and like,
Yes.
you
Yep.
know, did never again grew up in the family that we didn't talk about this stuff. Like
Mhm.
this wasn't anything. So she goes, "We're gonna find out about your past life." So she has someone who reads past lives.
Cool.
So she calls them without me knowing and tells
Mhm.
this person, I have a friend, mentions nothing about Italy. She just says, I have this friend who wants to find out about her past lives. So this person who reads past lives asks about, I think my first name, when and where I was born, the time of my birth, and where I live now. That's it. And she goes, Oh, yeah, in her past life, she was one of the first female silk merchants in Venice in 1500s. What? Come again?
Wow.
Supposedly, I had 9 kids. I was a widow from a young age, and I'm like, no wonder I'm still tired from being having 9 kids in 1500s. Like, I still can't get over that. If somebody told me that I was like, I don't know, a farmer in Ukraine, I'd be like, yeah, forget it. But a silk merchant in Venice, I'm very much identifying with.
Yeah.
To add the cherry on this cake, all of this is happening as I'm about to leave for my trip to Venice with the group that I've been planning for 2 years, not knowing any of this. Like way before I went to Rome, way before like I learned about this past life. My friend is like, we're gonna do some fact digging. Like, let's go and see like if Venice was actually in like the silk business. Yeah, it was. It was very
Yeah.
Marco Polo. Like Venice was on the route of the Silk Route. Crazy enough, the silk trade was happening in the neighborhood that wasn't even part of Venice before. It was outside of Venice,
Wow.
where the Jewish ghetto was later. The neighborhood that's called Canareggio. Guess where I happened to pick a hotel where we were staying for like our trip in Venice in
Wow.
Canareggio. What? So
I love.
I was like so like, oh my God, this is insane. We went to Venice. We
Mhm.
went to one of the silk merchant, like silk production, like and I was like, can you show me what I did here in 1500s? Like I need to see this kind of stuff.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
It was like so incredible. I So now I'm running with the story. I don't know if it's true, but I'm running with it. It's part of my brand, that's part of my identity.
Love
I
it.
was I was hustling 500 years ago and I'm still hustling and Venice and like I love Venice. Venice is like my favorite place in the whole wide world. I never cared about any other place as much as like kind of like having this connection. I came home, I told my husband, I see us retiring in Venice. I see us like when we're in our 60s, walking and like in the dusk with the lights twinkling like along the canals and having dinner. He's like, You're crazy. I'm like, Yeah, that's why you love me. But like all of this, like if I would have made this up, like I don't have that good of imagination to make it up. But this is
No,
just insane.
once you hear that story, you get goosebumps over your whole body, right? And you like so you feel it's right, and then you go and land in Italy, and it literally feels like home.
Yeah.
And it feels it to the point, and I'm going to see if I can describe it because spirit's kind of like helping me put to words the feeling of what does it feel like when you feel like you've gone somewhere and it feels like home. It's like your senses have heightened. It feels like you can almost like hear better, see better, like there's just and when you're there certain things like catch your eye that wouldn't normally, right? You almost feel like you can understand the language. I don't know if you can speak Italian, but like you feel like you can understand the language even though you really don't, and like you just feel happy and bright inside, and you feel like you belong, you feel like you're part of the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And I want to validate that for you because yeah, you did have a past life there. And like I hear spirit saying yes, and I'm not hearing any more to your story, probably because we're just chatting back and forth. But I felt the same way when I landed in Edinburgh. I think it was in 2011. And like I'd never been to Edinburgh. We have like my husband and I have traveled. We traveled a ton before we had kids. But when I landed in Edinburgh, I was like, oh man, I am home. I am home. And there's nothing that I think people like you don't know what it feels like until you've had it yourself. And like and I didn't know this was before I was spiritual at all. Like didn't know about past lives at all, right? Like, but there's just something there that tied me to that land. And I will like I had the same reaction. I'm like, I need to retire here. So I completely understand. And that to me is always the signal of it was a wonderful life there.
Yeah.
And I think that you would probably have you had the tie? What's the one of the wonders of the world where it's in the sand? Is that Jordan, the thing in the sand?
Petra. Yeah.
Petra.
Yeah.
You've had a life there too. So I don't know if you've been to Petra
No.
or felt it there. I would suspect if you go to Petra, you're going to actually feel the same way. I
Wow.
don't know if you're going to love it as much because I don't think it's as pretty as Venice. I've been to Venice. I understand that. But there's going to be places that you just naturally are pulled to
Yeah.
because of these past life connections. And what happens is when you're there energetically, it's like that old version of you and this new version of you almost meets up and you're like, holy moly. And there's just something that is inexplicable. And I'm sure that your listeners probably have been to places where it feels that way. But isn't that so rad?
That's
Isn't that like
amazing.
the best thing ever?
When people say like, "Oh, travel changes you," that's not just a catchy like phrase. It does change you. Like my friend who dug up all of this for me, she,
Yeah.
she has this connection to Paris. She's like, when I'm in Paris, I feel like I've been here. I feel like I know everything. I just like feel at home. And she did
Mhm.
her past lives readings, and she had multiple past lives, and she did have a past life in Paris. She also had a past life in ancient Egypt, where she was one of the female physicists in ancient Egypt. Guess
Wow.
what she studied in college in this life? Physics. She's an actuary. She studied physics and math. I'm like, this is so crazy. Like how does this just like happen? And I wish that like more people like listened to their inner feelings or intuition or whatever that is. Like when you're traveling, don't just like run from Colosseum to Vatican to like, Fountain Trevi Fountain just to put a check mark. Like I'm just using Italy, of course, as an example.
Yeah.
No matter where you are, like listen to yourself. Like how does it make you feel? Like how does it like do you want to go back there? Like when I'm in France, I could give two
Yeah.
shits.
Yeah. Yeah. Then you run from fountain to fountain because you don't care. And you're
Yeah.
like, it's fine. We'll just go see the sights. Yeah.
Yeah. I was in this most beautiful hotel in Provence. I was there for work. I stayed in the most gorgeous room. I woke up. I had like the floor to ceiling windows with the rolling hills outside of my window.
Yes.
Like picture perfect. I woke up, I look at the sun rising, and I'm like, it's nice. And then I tell myself, what if all of this was just teleported to Tuscany? Italy. And I have a completely different feeling, like
Mhm.
all the same things, the same sunrise, the same hills. But if I knew I was in Italy, I would feel completely different. So
Hmm.
like it's so interesting how like past life, like I want to encourage people to travel. Travel to your past life, travel your future life, present
Yeah.
life. It doesn't have to be across the seas. Maybe your past life was in your town, and maybe you pass by, I don't know, maybe you don't have a fountain, maybe you have a lamp post or something, or like a tower clock that you're like, it makes you catch your breath and you just like want to stand there and look at it. Just like
Hmm.
to that. Maybe there is something to it. If it makes you feel good, like embrace it. Don't worry about people thinking you're crazy. People gonna think you're crazy anyway for many other reasons, like quitting your corporate job and doing what you want to do, right? Just like give yourself that permission to follow your heart and whatever it takes.
You're absolutely right. And I'm laughing in my head right now just because it I think it's a past life tie, especially if you have no sort of ancestry there, like you with Italy, and then me with like I'm not Scottish, I'm actually Italian. Yeah, right. Like I'm not, but what I did do because I loved it so much and I felt that tie so much is again before I got into the spiritual work, I got a giant like tattoo of thistle on my leg
Uh,
because I needed a piece of Scotland with me. So I'm totally with you. I love it, and I think the more that people travel, the more that people experience the world. Like it just opens them up, right? And I think vice versa, if you have an intuitive hit or this desire to go somewhere, particularly like if you're a kid and you're obsessed with like Paris, if you're obsessed with Rome, obsessed with Egypt, I know we've mentioned those three, and there's a reason why you're naturally obsessed with certain things as a kid. So follow that intuition as you get older. If you feel intuitively drawn to a place, and like we talked about in the beginning, women are very easily to be like, oh, we don't need to go there. That's maybe just a pipe dream for me. We'll go somewhere that's fun for the kids, right? Like I guarantee you it's going to be worth it to travel to these places where you have this intuitive draw towards, and just wait and see the magic that unfolds once you get there.
That's so true and so incredible. It made me think of a client I had a couple of years ago. Her 15-year-old son was obsessed with World War II history. He's just like
Mm-hmm.
such a buff of history buff. He wanted to learn everything. And they were going to Paris because their older daughter was studying abroad there. So I ended up doing for them a tour of their Normandy beaches, D-Day. And she said it was like the most incredible experience. Like he was so into it. He like wanted to know every little fact and he wanted to like step on the beaches. And I'm like, now that as we're having this, I didn't think of that then, but now as we're having this conversation, I'm like, maybe he was there during World War II in his past life, and now he's reborn into this life. It's just incredible. It's so
It
interesting.
is.
So
It's
interesting.
so interesting.
Well, Nicole, I'm sure we can chat for another 7 hours about this. Like, I have a feeling we will hit stop on the recording and continue chatting.
Yes.
But to be respectful of our audience, I just want to thank you so much for taking this time to chat. If any of our ladies or men or whoever's listening in this life or past life or future lives, if
Mhm.
they want to find you, connect with you, can you give us where they can do that?
Absolutely. So I'm on all the socials, but the easiest way to find me is on my website, mediumnicole.com. That gets you to any sort of reading you want on my socials. And actually, on there, I have some free gifts, especially how to tap into your own intuition. So if you're listening to us and you have no idea what your intuition is or how to tap into it, I have a really quick, easy 2-page guide that starts leading you down the path of what is my intuition? How do I lean into it more? And then you can go and pick your travel destinations and get those scheduled.
That's amazing. And we will put all the links, including the freebie, in the notes of the show. Everyone, thank you so much for spending this hour with us, Nicole. It's been a blast. Thank you again for taking the time to chat and stay tuned for more.
All right. Thank you.